Today I am really just waking up and just meditated and having a lot of um, ego thoughts and not a lot of clear guidance about anything other than the basic perfect truth that we are all love and perfect, and I am innocent and made of love. So I'm gonna see what I'm guided to read here today to get me back in touch with my guidance. Got a lot of it these last week and few weeks, but not so much this morning. All right. Well, this is a theme I've been working with, of course. I randomly opened to the book to lesson 12 in the workbook. So lesson 12 is I am upset because I see a meaningless world. So that's a great thing to look at today, because I have been not at peace with many things happening in the meaningless world that I see. And I've also believed a lot recently that I have been happy and at peace with a lot of things happening in the meaningless world. So it goes both ways. And I'm grateful for the constant reminders of where I need to return to the truth and let go of all of this meaning I place on everything, all of these people and circumstances and outcomes and plans and goals and situations and interactions. I've made endless meanings. Every possible meaning or outcome, I have thought about it. So where has that got me today? It got me nowhere. It got me returning to remembering the truth that none of those outcomes are necessary, are real, are what's going to make me happy or sad or upset or feel any way. None of those are supposed to necessarily happen. None of them will necessarily happen. None of them won't necessarily happen. None of it matters. None of that matters, because the present moment is the only place where I can feel at peace. The present moment is the only place that we can feel at peace. That is where heaven is. That's it. No use looking anymore for it out there. It is a beautiful sunny day out here in Portland. I'm looking at the beautiful sky, and it's blue, and there's some white clouds, and the sun is out, and the birds are chirping, and there's green ivy, and wow, yeah, it is beautiful, and I appreciate it, and that's beautiful, and that's okay. To appreciate these things and people and everything in our life. It's all part of the oneness. And that blue sky really isn't the thing that's making me happy. That's not how I'm going to truly permanently be happy from within. I believe it makes me happy temporarily. I believe I am happy when I see the sun shining, but that's temporary, like all of our emotions. It's okay to move in and out of them. That's how they work. Okay, so speaking of momentary upsets, I just choked on some water as I was drinking it and was coughing a lot, and it was very uncomfortable. So that is a beautiful reflection of what I was just talking about. And I am distracted now, so I'm going to read lesson 12 that I had opened up to. I am upset because I see a meaningless world. The importance of this idea lies in the fact that it contains a correction for a major perceptual distortion. You think that what upsets you is a frightening world, or a sad world, or a violent world, or an insane world. All these attributes are given it by you. The world is meaningless in itself. These exercises are done with eyes open. Look around you, this time quite slowly. Try to pace yourself so that the slow shifting of your glance from one thing to another involves a fairly constant time interval. Do not allow the time of the shift to become markedly longer or shorter, but try instead to keep a measured, even tempo throughout. What you see does not matter. You teach yourself this as you give whatever your glance rests on equal attention and equal time. This is a beginning step in learning to give them all equal value. As you look about you, say to yourself, I think I see a fearful world, a dangerous world, a hostile world, a sad world, a wicked world, a crazy world, and so on, using whatever descriptive term happens to occur to you. If terms which seem positive rather than negative occur to you, include them. For example, you might think of a good world or a satisfying world. If such terms occur to you, use them along with the rest. You may not yet understand why these nice adjectives belong in these exercises, but remember that a good world implies a bad one, and a satisfying world implies an unsatisfying one. Yeah, that was what I was just speaking about. The good, the bad, the satisfying, the dissatisfying, the pleasant, the unpleasant world, and our emotions that we believe are based on it are all just relative to each other and relative as parts of the illusion of the world that is not real and that is not creating our peace. All terms which cross your mind are suitable subjects for today's exercises. Their seeming quality does not matter. Yeah, that's a really challenging concept. Be sure that you do not alter the time intervals between applying today's idea to what you think is pleasant and what you think is unpleasant. For the purposes of these exercises, there is no difference between them. At the end of the practice period, add, but I am upset because I see a meaningless world. What is meaningless is neither good nor bad. Why then should a meaningless world upset you? If you could accept the world as meaningless, and let the truth be written upon it for you. It would make you indescribably happy. That's beautiful. I'm going to read that again. If you could accept the world as meaningless and let the truth be written upon it for you, it would make you indescribably happy. But because it is meaningless, you are impelled to write upon it what you would have it be. It is this you see in it. It is this that is meaningless in truth. Beneath your words is written the world of God, the word of God. The truth upsets you now, but when your words have been erased, you will see his. That is the ultimate purpose of these exercises. 3 or 4 times is enough for practicing the idea for today, nor should the practice periods exceed a minute. You may find even this too long. Terminate the exercises when you experience a sense of strain. So I feel guided to go through this exercise with myself. So I'm going to look about and say whatever comes with what I think I see. I think I see a messy world. I think I see a happy world. I think I see a sunny world. I think I see a busy and fast-paced world. I think I see a confusing world. I think I see a chaotic world. I think I see a frightening world. I think I see a busy world. I think I see a heartbreaking world. I think I see a dangerous world. I think I see a sleeping world. I think I see a mean world. I think I see a judgmental world. So I'm going to stop there because I'm experiencing some fatigue. So that's the sense of strain that can indicate that we are done with the exercise. And that's it. At the end of the practice period, I say, but I am upset because I see a meaningless world. So I'm upset because I see a meaningless world. So I am upset because I interpreted the meaningless world to mean it was scary, it was chaotic, it was messy, it was heartbreaking. This is really a, I work so much with this lesson, this idea, this truth. And it's a really, really difficult one that many people in life aren't meant to understand and get past. Most people believe they are the victim of their circumstances and the life and the world around them. And many people will misinterpret this lesson or this idea that we are creating our own upset. This is essentially what this lesson is saying. This is the foundational lesson to this idea of that we are creating our own upset in every moment. In every moment, we are choosing how we feel. And that is extremely triggering, uncomfortable for many people to hear. And they would think that I was crazy and I was victim blaming. Many people can interpret this as victim blaming. And this is where it gets quite complicated and controversial. And I remember this, so I was one of those people. I mean, I still am in a way whenever I'm having an upset, right? But it's so temporary and I can return to peace now, but I didn't get there just magically overnight. When I was in the place of victim blaming, or blaming myself, being the victim, and blaming the world for how I feel, for how my body felt and operated when I was really sick. I was sick for over 10 years with chronic gut infections and illness, and then toxic mold illness. And I didn't know how to get better. And I was sick. And it had, the trauma from that had created tons of anxiety and panic attacks all the time, PTSD kind of symptoms, for years and years, avoidance. I couldn't function in the world. I did a really good job of pretending, did a great job. But inside I was dying. It's like I was killing myself, continuing to believe I was a victim of the world. And that doesn't discount the pain that I was experiencing in my body, in my mind, in my heart, the fear, all of that, the physical pain. That was my real lived experience as a human being in a body. Bodies experience all sorts of things and have all sorts of extremely intense challenges. So when I was going through this, I started working with the concept of I'm never upset for the reason I think. I am making myself depressed or anxious. And when I when I started being open to this idea, what happened was I was actually felt not open to it at all. And I felt very angry about it. So I would listen to Jennifer Hadley's podcast on the Course in Miracles. And I remember she would talk about this idea, and I couldn't stop listening to her podcasts. And I would even listen to this one particular one over and over. I remember where she really talked about this like the whole time. And I would just like listen. I'd be like, what is she talking about? That's terrible. Like, that's so mean to say to someone, and like all the things. And yet at the same time, I knew somewhere deep down inside of me, I knew that she was right, that was right, that I was making myself depressed. I was choosing this experience. And it was particularly difficult for me because I didn't know how to get better physically. I was extremely sick. I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't see clients anymore. I had been a therapist trying to get through this illness, and I could barely even like do basic things. So I had to not work for a year or so just to survive, just to get my body out of bed and without too much pain and fatigue. My fatigue was so severe. I mean, I could barely even have the energy to cook some days, a lot of days. And everything was just like, I felt like I weighed like 1,000 pounds. So I would listen to this podcast and I'd be like, that's like, I don't know how to get better. I'm so sick. Like, I cannot do anything for myself. Like, I'm completely dependent on my partner at the time, my parents who I'd moved back in with. Like, I couldn't, I had no income. I was going into debt, and I'd become really depressed from this. And I was already suffering with like extreme anxiety for years. But it started to lift. The fear about it started to lift. It's like I had to really surrender. I really had to surrender. I don't think we understand what it feels like to surrender until we actually experience it. Because I had to surrender to not wanting that anymore. I didn't want it. And up until that time, I would have believed I didn't want it. Like, why would any of us want to not feel happy and at peace? It's very confusing, right? Because we think that we believe we don't ever want to feel that way. Yet some part of us does. The ego really wants to feel that way. That's its strongest desire and passion and craving is to feel bad and to make us feel bad. So it feels like we don't want it, but we do want it on some level. And that's a really, really difficult to hear for the first time, for the first thousands of times for most of us. And so it's like I had this dissonance going on, I had this resistance listening to these ideas and starting to learn about the course and read the lessons and discover this truth, because part of me was willing to surrender to that maybe not being true, to maybe I am choosing this. Because maybe if that's true, that I am choosing this, then what does that mean? That means that I can choose something else. That is the beauty of choice. That is how choice works. That is how freedom from our fears and from these lies we tell ourselves happens, is by choosing something differently. If I continue to choose in my mind this specific thing that I think is making me happy or sad, it's not going to get me anywhere, because I am not going to be, I'm so attached to that specific outcome, to that specific situation, to that specific person doing this specific thing, that I lose myself. Where am I in that? I am putting my happiness or my sadness, my pain, I'm putting my power completely in that situation, into that other person, so that whatever that other person chooses to do, that makes me feel a certain way. So, how could that possibly make me happy? It can't. It can't. And when I really had to surrender to facing that shadow and that shame I had about that I had caused myself to feel this level of fear and heartache and suffering emotionally from what had happened to my physical body and the loss of my physical abilities at that time. And that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And I'm still doing it. My body is healthy now, but I am still triggered by those same things. They just look a lot less intense. They feel a lot less intense, and I can work through them extremely rapidly now. But that took many years, and at the same time, it took an instant. You know, that's the holy instant where we realize we are the love of our lives. I am the love of my life, and I get to make myself happy. Nobody or nothing can make me happy except me. I get to be happy because I choose to be happy. And that doesn't invalidate someone else's pain and suffering. If I'm watching someone go through pain or suffering, that doesn't mean I'm not being compassionate and empathetic towards their experience. I absolutely am, because if I am truly happy and at peace within myself, I am holding that truth for that person and their fears and their suffering in that moment. And I am knowing that they get to choose that as well. And if they're unable to choose that, if they're unable to choose love, and they continue to choose fear, I get the beautiful blessing to choose the miracle, to choose love. A miracle is simply a shift from fear to love. That's all it is. A miracle is choosing that, choosing to be willing to see that. Now, one thing I'm working on with this is how this turns into patterns of challenges and codependence with these attachments to people. So when I am not in a place of loving myself, and it's so subtle because I love myself a lot. I love myself a lot. More than I did 6 months ago, more than I did a year ago, more than I did 2 years ago, more than I did 3 years ago, and 4 and 5 years ago. When I started going through this shift 5 or so years ago, I didn't even realize I hated myself. I was like, oh, I'm content. I had repressed those shadow parts of myself so much, in that shame of my own body failing me and my own fears of this chronic illness I had been experiencing, my own shame of just the level of fear that I experienced on a daily basis with it. It was fear that my body couldn't keep me safe, and that my heart couldn't keep me safe, that my body was going to get sicker, that my heart was going to get sicker, that my heart was going to suffer or break if this person leaves me, or if this family member doesn't help me, or if I don't get some sort of physical need met, financial or housing or help cooking or ride somewhere or whatever it was. Like I couldn't rely on any of that anymore, because we need the support of others. We need the help, but that's not where the peace comes from. That's not where we truly begin to feel safe and at home in our own bodies. And wow, I feel so safe and at home in my body now compared to that. And still, I'm challenged with it, just like everybody else. I used to have this laundry list of food allergies and sensitivities after all the gut infection that happened to me, and the mold exacerbated it. And I only have 2 left, dairy and gluten. I'm really holding on to those beliefs real strongly for some reason. It's okay. This is an opportunity for us to love ourselves when we're the shame is so unconscious and so subtle for us. We don't talk about shame enough because we're ashamed of facing our own shame, because it's extremely disturbing and it's not pretty to look at. And the depths of the shame that we can uncover is, it doesn't have to be that frightening. I got to some depths with it the last few months, and particularly a couple of weeks ago. This shame that I hold, and this residual fear and avoidance I have of certain things that I believe are going to make my body sick again, like it did in the past. And every time I name it, this is why I'm saying it out loud right now, because like I've talked about this so many times and shared my story, but without naming and owning the shame around it. I've talked about the fears and how I've worked through the fears and accepting myself and loving myself for the fears. I've talked about that plenty of times. What bringing the shame into it has been extremely healing for me in the last few weeks. And so I want to share that, because every time that I name this shame to myself and look at it in the face, it's me. That shame looks like me. They look like me. They are a very scared little ashamed little child. And it goes back probably way before my body got sick. Our shame goes back to the original. It's, what the Bible refers to as the original sin. I think the Bible refers to it as that, like this idea that sin is real. And how could we possibly not feel ashamed if we believe that we are sinners and that sin is real and that we can sin? That causes us only to believe that we are bad people, that we are not good enough, that we have to do a million things right and do a million things perfectly all the time with ourselves and others in order to redeem ourselves from this shame of being bad people and being sinners. And that's just bullshit, you know. It's just, we're not, how is believing that I'm a bad person and believing that I'm a sinner going to help me love myself? My whole mission in personally in my life's work and with clients and everything I'm doing is about helping people remember that they are truly only love and to love themselves. So how does being a sinner, how does being ashamed fit into that truth? It fits in, it only fits into it in the context of looking at those lies that cause that shame and then being willing to surrender them. And for me, I've been surrendering. To surrender these is so scary. I don't know why it's so scary for us to feel safe in our hearts and our minds and in our bodies and with ourselves and with other people. And it's so scary to feel safe. You know, our only fear is love. Our only fear is fear of love. That's what it all comes down to. Fear of loving ourselves, fear of not feeling ashamed anymore. And we have to truly, radically be willing to look at that shame and surrender it as something that truly is not serving us, because that is keeping me attached to this meaningless world. That shame, that fear is keeping me attached to this belief that people, places, things, experiences, outcomes can hurt me, can break my heart, can hurt my body. I know they can't. We know they can't, but we really don't know they can't. Otherwise, they would stop continuing to seemingly hurt us. So I continue to be sensitive to dairy and gluten and other things, sugar. I continue, my body continues to react to the world around me. But I do not become a victim of it anymore. Or if I do, it's temporary, because I use these truths as tools to remember who I am. If I think I'm anything other than innocent and guiltless and loving and lovable and one with God, then I think that then I'm believing I'm separate from God. That's where all of our fear comes from, all of our shame, all of our grief, all of our heartache, all of our pain comes from a belief that we are separate from God. And therefore, we have catapulted into these human bodies to experience tremendous separation from God. It's so intense. And I'm laughing about it because we can only get to a certain amount of suffering with it before we have to laugh about it. That's the place that I get to often, all the time. I feel like my life is constantly this just crazy fun, ridiculously miraculous roller coaster ride, spiritual comedy, queer woman reality show. Like, it's just like the these signs that come to me, these messages, this guidance that comes through me, um, back and forth between these things happening with my ego and attachments to people and money and things and outcomes and career. Like, I don't want any of it. In this moment, I'm clear about it. It's very easy for me to show up here and talk about this and know the truth that I don't need any of that. And I go back and forth like everyone else with believing I need that thing and that person and that thing and that situation. It is just on and on and on and on and on and on. And it is funny. It's funny to me because I have compassion for myself. I'm not laughing at myself. I'm laughing with myself. When I was a kid, I used to be the scapegoat of a lot of different friend groups throughout the years, partially because I just didn't care. I didn't care what people thought of me. So I let my friends, make fun of me and be that person that they can make fun of because I was weird and quirky and different, and I could take it. I don't care. And at the same time, a part of me played that role because I thought I was weird and different and didn't fit in. And so that was also my lived experience some of the time, a lot of the time. And I wouldn't have ever imagined not like I could never imagine now wanting to fit in with the world now. Like fitting in with, the typical, normal, average people, whatever we want to call people, is like quite disturbing to me. Like I want nothing to do with fitting into the how most people live their lives. Because when I try to do that now, I suffer tremendously. I have no desire for the that American dream cookie cutter life. If parts of that turn out to be my life, great. That's great. I'm open to that. But if I'm attached to any part of that, the perfect mate, the perfect partner, the perfect house, the perfect life, the abundant bank account, I'm going to get stuck somewhere along the way a million times with any time that is not my experience, that's not the outcome. So how could that give me peace and joy and happiness? It can't. It can't. Because it's a meaningless world out there. David Hoffmeister does a wonderful job at talking about the meaningless world. And, people can misinterpret what he's saying. Just like I originally, part of me was very resistant, angry, and misinterpreting what Jennifer Hadley was saying about that we're choosing our own emotions, and including when we feel depressed and suffering. And yeah, that doesn't discount or invalidate our grief, our pain, our fear. We have to face it and be willing to accept it as real in the moment in order to surrender to it, in order to really surrender to it. Sometimes it takes those rock bottom experiences to surrender to it. And that's what it looked like for me. And God, it was just so painful. But yeah, that David Hoffmeister, some people will misinterpret it. Well, a lot of people, if they listen to him. would think that he is like a total narcissist and not compassionate at all, the way he talks about, you know, children and animals and people suffering, because he's just happy and at peace about it. He really is. And it's not because he lacks compassion, it's because he has deep compassion and love for himself. He sees all of those people in pain as God sees them. God sees us as not suffering. God is not lacking compassion when they see us as not suffering. God has so much compassion and love for us that it's not even a word that could describe how they feel. Spirit, it's just love. The illusion is meaningless, but also the illusion is made from love. It's made of love. It is love. This mold and stuff that I believe is going to hurt me, it's love. It's made of love. It just gets confused. My ego gets confused about it and then has a reaction to it, and that's okay. But we have to be willing to love ourselves and treat ourselves like our best friend, like our love of our lives. If I go around telling myself things all day about myself, being hard on myself about things, that's not how I would treat my best friend. I tell clients this a lot, like, listen to the thoughts in your head you're telling yourself and be like, would you tell your best friend that? No. So stop treating your best friend that way, because I'm my best friend. I am my best friend. So why are the thoughts I have about my life and the fears and the possibilities that I come up with? Okay, so one thing I experience is like, I imagine like all the different outcomes of a situation. That's how my ego operates. We all do that, but some people more than others. So when I do that, like if I was like saying that stuff out loud to my best friend, she would tell me, Kel, you're really sixing it up is one thing she would say, because the Enneagram 6 is the one that imagines all those different outcomes. That's why I have had this lived experience for many years of a ton of anxiety, because that's how a lot of Enneagram 6s experience life, is with a lot of anxiety, among other things. But now it's I'm able to get out of that loop, because I can tell myself what my best friend would tell me in that situation is like, none of those things are happening, that none of that's going on right now. All of that stuff probably won't happen. And even if it does, it's all going to be okay. You know, that's the kind of thing my best friend would say. That's the kind of thing I would say to my best friend, to someone, to anyone, to my clients. Yet we don't actually say the same things to ourselves. And if we really think about that, if we really tune into that and start observing that with gentleness and compassion, we will hear that ego voice more clearly, which then allows us to discern our guidance, God's voice through that. And our guides have so many loving things they're telling us all the time. And sometimes we just can't hear that stuff because the ego voice is louder. And so, you know, I work on telling myself things that I would tell my best friends and the people that I love in my life. Because why would I not love myself as much as I love someone else and treat myself the way that I would treat someone else? And it goes both ways. Why would I treat someone else differently than I would treat myself? Why would I treat that person that seems different than me, that's really angry, or that's done some really horrible things in their life? Why would I treat them any differently than I treat myself? I've done some horrible things, maybe not those types of things, but it doesn't matter because we're all one. And when I judge, and here's the next level of it, is when I judge my brother or sister, when I judge my neighbor for something they've done, somewhere that's a judgment in me for something I've done, maybe in a past life, for some similar way that I've done, for some belief I hold about myself that is the same or similar to that belief that I have about that person. So I'm stuck in an illusion of their illusion. And that's preventing myself and them from being at peace. And so that's really, really where we're going with this truth is to gently observe ourselves when we're having thoughts that are not making us feel good, feel at peace. Am I willing to look at those and ask myself, could something else be true here? And when I'm in an illusion about someone else's illusion, when I'm suffering because I have someone in my life suffering, the best thing I can do is hold that truth for myself, that I'm at peace, and hold that truth for them, that they get to be at peace as well. I can choose peace for myself, which chooses peace for them. And that's the way energy works. That's the way prayer works. Because we're all one. So me choosing peace for myself is choosing peace for them. And when I've worked with this specifically through Ho'oponopono. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. When I look at someone else who I believe has done harmful things that have upset me, I have to forgive wherever that was in myself, wherever I've done that harmful thing to upset myself or to upset someone else in my life at any point in the space and time continuum. And if I'm willing to forgive that within myself, I have to ask myself for forgiveness, because me forgiving that person has nothing to do with me doing that. It's me forgiving myself for that meaning I've made that they've harmed me, and me forgiving myself for having done that, and me taking self-responsibility for my own emotions and my own actions that in some way, even if it wasn't in the way I can identify, was similar to the thing that they did. And that can feel like hard work as well. But that work has created miraculous healing, enormous miracles in my life, and healing with many relationships and past experiences with myself and other people. Huge, huge miracles with that, working with that prayer, Ho'oponopono. So there's also a beautiful story about Ho'oponopono. You can read it on YouTube. You can search Dr. Hew Len. Joe Vitale does a great, has a YouTube video and has a book, Zero Limits, about Dr. Hew Len working with Ho'oponopono to essentially cure the clinically insane, an entire unit of clinically insane individuals. And it's a beautiful demonstration of how miracles work and how we can shift from fear to love and how we can forgive ourselves for anything. And it doesn't make us selfish or self-absorbed people. It doesn't make us bad people to forgive ourselves for murdering someone. But I mean, really, this is the level we're going towards, that we're healing. To take self-responsibility for that. And God knows who we are. Thank God for that. So, yes, I'll stop there. Thank you for listening. And I'm Kel Lash with Many Miracles Coaching. You can find me at manymiraclescoaching.com. MANY, Many Miracles Coaching. And happy new moon. The new moon is a beautiful reset. So may you be at peace. May you be whole and healthy and loved. And may you remember that you are already, and that God knows this already about you and is holding that love beyond the limits that you can possibly imagine. Much love to everyone. Thank you.